Here.
Friarman Hunt.
Here.
And Pevsner.
Here.
Okay, the second item on our agenda is the report out from the closed session.
Thank you, Chair. The Planning Commission met in closed session with legal counsel this evening to review a matter of anticipated litigation and received a briefing, and no action was taken, and that is the end of my report.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to rotation of chair and vice chair. Planning Commission will nominate a chair and a vice chair to serve term through June 2019.
Is that something that's supposed to be moved? I move
Yes.
to,
Yes,
or do I
yeah.
just nominate?
Yeah, well, you nominate and then we vote.
Okay, I will nominate John Hutt as chair for the coming year.
And
Do we
we
nominate?
need to nominate a vice chair as well.
Do we do them at the same time, or do we do one or the other?
can
We
do them
at the
separate.
same time. Yeah.
We'll do them
Yeah.
at the same time. Well, seeing that Tom Dennison is not here, I will nominate him for vice chair.
Though, yeah, I assume he will accept that nomination.
Yeah, I think so.
We should explain for the audience that it's not capricious, that it's
He
already
is the
been
next in
discussed
line,
with.
yeah, yes.
We do this by seniority
Right.
of the people who haven't yet been chair in their current term. So he's the next one in line, and Joe Catalano is the next one after him.
And you don't usually get repeat customers, so
Right.
it's a one-way.
It's like so much fun.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
I'll second. Then I'll second that. Or is that did you just make a motion?
Yes,
You-
we have two motions. You can
Okay.
second both.
I'll second them both.
Okay, and is there any other nominations?
Nope.
Okay, then we'll have a vote on me for chair and Tom Dennison for vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next, we'll go on to item number 4, the agenda. We'll have a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
We have move in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so motion carries unanimously. Next is approval of the minutes. We have minutes from 2 different meetings. Do we have any corrections for the July 19th minutes?
No.
There was
Yeah, I didn't.
something on one of these, and I couldn't figure out what they meant I was saying. Let me look at that one for a second. I guess it was okay. Never mind.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make-
so move.
Yes. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm going to abstain from that one because I wasn't at that meeting.
I think, was that the one, I can't remember which one I wasn't at. That was the last
You
one.
were at that meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, then. yes.
Okay, the next one then is the August 2nd. And, I don't have any comments on that. Anybody have any comments on that?
I'm gonna abstain. I wasn't there, so.
I have no comments.
No.
Okay. Do we have enough to vote on that then, if we just have 3? Or we at the
I don't
August
think I
2nd?
was.
You weren't.
That was not.
Okay.
Who?
We want to, we'll just postpone approval of that one until the next meeting.
You can do that, or you can certainly do that. Eventually, even people who didn't attend a meeting can vote to approve the minutes because it's just an administrative action.
Okay.
So do you want to postpone or vote?
I can vote. That's fine.
Okay.
No problem.
Do we have a motion to approve then?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of August 2nd.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next, we will move on to audience comments. We actually have an audience tonight, which is a nice thing. So if anybody would like to speak on anything that is not on the agenda, feel free to come down and address the commission. Okay, seeing no one, we will move on to our first public hearing, which is design review and reasonable accommodation at 350 Olive Tree Lane. Do we have a staff presentation?
We do have a staff presentation. We also have a PowerPoint presentation, so you may want to adjust your chairs accordingly. Also, the applicants are here this evening, and they also have a PowerPoint presentation that will be loaded up after we finish this. So if you recall, the Planning Commission met last on July 5th, and at that meeting, the Commission reviewed the plans and elevations and provided direction to the applicant. And the items that are listed here are some of the comments that the Commission identified. One was to submit plans that are prepared by an architect to accurately detail the placement of the garage, show the turning radius of the vehicles from the street into the garage, provide design options that reduce the encroachment into the front yard setback, which could include the following scenarios: move the garage closer to the house, keep 12-foot garage bays but reduce the length of the garage, and also another option was to make one of the garage bays a standard 8 feet in width. So the applicants have returned with two separate options. Option A is the construction of a detached 636 square foot street-facing garage, which is outside of the front yard prevailing setback. Option B is a detached 627 square foot garage with side entrance within the front yard prevailing setback, and we'll look at the details of both options in the presentation. In terms of the overall project summary, everything is code compliant. I did highlight the front building setbacks, both for option A and option B, and the code required allowing a 30-foot 6-inch prevailing front yard setback, which is on option B is not compliant with that. Option A, this is the site plan, and as you can see, there is a garage here that faces Olive Tree Lane. The dashed red line, the vertical red line, is indicating the prevailing front yard setback. In this particular plan, the garage is located 11 feet away from the primary structure of the residential building behind it. This is the vehicular entry plan showing both egress and ingress to the to Olive Tree Lane from the street-facing garage. And this is the landscape plan. The plant legend identifies plants that are both native and drought tolerant. The driveway and walkway will be paved with a pervious material. And the front yard landscaping in this case occupies 65.9% of the front yard area. Floor plan for option A, both showing two 12-foot wide garage bays. There's a small alcove projection in this location here. And we have the roof plan to the right. Elevations of the building. So the west elevation, again, is facing Olive Tree Lane. The south elevation faces the front yard area, and the walkway would pass by that, and the house would be back behind, to the right, if we're looking at the south elevation. The east elevation is facing the residential building, and the north elevation is facing the adjacent property. Again, all the detailing is with Dutch gable roof. There was a small shed dormer in this location here, and is reflective of the architecture of the house as a Tudor style design. Visual simulation of the street elevation, street view of the garage. And the image on the right is actually looking southward from the adjacent property. towards the street-facing garage. This is option B, the site plan for option B. Again, you can see the red dashed line, which is identifying the prevailing front yard setback. This is a side entry garage. We see the driveway entering from here. There's the garage placement. And the distance between the garage and the residential building is 9 feet. And as you can see in the paved area for the driveway, there's an increased backup radius in this location. The vehicular entry plan showing the entry and backup radius. The landscape plan very similar to the other, except this one, the front yard landscaping occupies less open space or planted space at 54.3% of the front yard area. Floor plan and the roof plan. In this case, the floor plan does not include the projecting alcove as we saw in option A. And that's the difference in the square footage between the two options. The west elevation, which faces Olive Tree Lane. The side entry garage on the south elevation. Again, utilizing the same architectural detail as the house. Option B is the east elevation, which faces the residential building, and the north elevation faces the neighboring property. Let me go back here. Yeah, okay. Visual simulation from Olive Tree Lane, looking at the paved area, the side entry garage, and again the view from the neighbor to the north looking southward. Photographs of the existing conditions of the site. Again, the main residence is set back 68 feet from the front property line. There's a large flat pad in the foreground of that house. So pursuant to Code Section 17.20, a design review permit is required for buildings that exceed 3,500 square feet of gross floor area. In this case, both the garage, the former garage, which is now a storage facility, and the residence exceed 3,500 square feet. Therefore, a design review permit is required. And for the reasonable accommodation, there's a requirement in the code, section 17.61, that provides people with disabilities reasonable accommodation as necessary to ensure equal access to either their dwelling or place of business. Design review findings are presented here. They're included in your packet. These are the specific findings. The justification of each is in the packet. There's quite a few of them, as we can see. They were revised since the prior meeting of July 5th, including the finding 8, A through F were applicable. And reasonable accommodation request findings. So the alternatives before the Commission this evening: the Planning Commission can approve the request for design review permit 1802 and the reasonable accommodation request 1801, subject to the conditions of approval. Or you could approve the request with modifications. You can deny the reasonable accommodation, stating the findings that you feel cannot be made. Or you can continue the subject project and provide direction to staff and the applicant. Staff is recommending that the Planning Commission approve option A, of Design Review Permit 1802 and Reasonable Accommodation Request 1801, subject to the conditions of approval, and Planning Commission Resolution 1804, which is included as Attachment A in your packet. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions of staff?
I don't.
Okay, then we will open the public hearing, and if the applicant has a presentation would like to come up and can address the commission.
Move back again.
Okay, we got another PowerPoint.
That's my PowerPoint. So thank you, members of the commission. I will try to be quick, but definitely stop me if you have questions. Vincent summarized nicely. We're here for a request for reasonable accommodation and design review. Just some background. I think if this is all clear. 2-car garage located in the front of the residence on a somewhat irregular private lane. I think at least one of you was not able to see my beautiful presentation of Olive Tree Lane. So I have that in the appendix if we want to take another walk down the lane. Supported by a reasonable accommodation request, and back spending some more time with you this evening. So the takeaways that we heard very loud and clear at the July 5th meeting were: 1, that we should consult an architect; 2, that we should strive to remove or reduce the encroachment; 3, that we should reduce the mass and scale of the structure or take measures that we could try to mitigate those; and then that we prepare and submit more complete architectural drawings with full design notes. So this is a little bit of redundancy, so I apologize, but we did consult an architect, John Hensler from the Hensler Design Group. He specializes in mitigating mass and scale issues. Was referred to us by a local neighbor in Sierra Madre whose project he worked on and has design projects in our city. So we took the recommendation of get someone with some local knowledge and expertise. After spending some time with John and him coming out to the site, we determined that maybe the best approach here would be to rotate the building 90 degrees so that we could completely remove the encroachment from the setback. Also, the benefit for us is this improves significantly the functionality of the driveway and parking for my wife, because it allows much easier ingress and egress, and Vincent showed the traffic patterns. It's one turn instead of multiple turns to get in and out. And it also reduces the surface area of the drive and walkway so that we'll have more landscaping on the property. We also took some measures to reduce the mass and scale of the structure. So with the new design, we've reduced the length, so it's not as long by a couple of feet. There was the architect came up with the idea of the alcove, I think is what we're calling it, to help. He felt it would help enhance the aesthetics of the building, so we took his advice on that. And then we worked hard with him to make sure that it tied to the design and character of the existing home. I won't go through the detail that Vincent went through with you, but we did submit the new drawings, and I do hope those are satisfactory, but certainly open for any comments or questions on those. We do believe that the new design reflects the character of our neighborhood. As we talked about last time, this is a somewhat irregular private lane with no through traffic. There's 10 houses that use Olive Tree Lane to access parking. Not all of them technically facing Olive Tree Lane, but there's 2 on the west side of the road that have parking. 5 of those 10 homes have parking structures immediately facing the lane. And 5 of those have structures located within what is the standard setback. And we are, to hit the last bullet point, we are not asking for any type of encroachment to the setback with this new design option A. And then the 6th home on the lane that I showed last time has a 6-foot block retaining wall that's located immediately on the easement. So I won't go through an excruciating detail here, but this is basically the project highlights. In terms of the findings that you all look to, consistent with the general plan, does not interfere with neighboring properties. We think that it is thoughtfully designed to reduce mass and scale. At least we certainly hired someone with expertise in that area to help us. Consistent and proportionate with the character of Olive Tree Lane. We also think the front yard placement is consistent with the neighborhood. No material impacts on the city or our neighbors. We're maintaining design consistency. I have a slide in the appendix. I can show you the kind of materials and finishes if you want to see a little more detail on that. No encroachment required with this new option A. And to our knowledge, we haven't had a single objection to the project from anybody, so we're hopeful that that means at least there's not broad community opposition. And obviously supported by a documented reasonable accommodation request. In terms of the reasonable accommodation request, so these are the structure of the legal accommodation findings, reasonable accommodation findings, sorry, that are in the city's findings, and we feel that we've demonstrated the protected disability necessary to ameliorate the impacts or effects of that disability, affording an equal opportunity to use and enjoyment of the home, and then the requested accommodation does not impose an undue financial or administrative burden on the city, no fundamental alteration of the neighborhood or general plan, and doesn't pose any threat to health or safety to anyone in the city or our neighborhood. So balancing those factors, we believe the requested accommodation is reasonable, and we would ask the commission to approve the project. And thank you.
Okay, and just to clarify, when you talk about the project, your preference is with staff option A?
Our preference is option A.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant?
I have a question about the roof line that's facing the street, the west-facing roof line, and why you designed it in that way with the 2 different things on it. Sort of.
I don't know if I can go back on or not. Just so we're all looking at it.
Looking
Yeah.
at this, right?
Yeah.
The front of it.
Sorry. Yeah, so you mean how we have the traditional Tudor peak and then the small shed?
Yeah.
Yeah, why'd
It
you do
was
that?
it was a design element that we talked through with the architect just to break up the plane of the roof.
Uh-huh.
So that was, it's not functional.
Mm-hmm.
It's purely a design element.
I was just curious where that came from. Thank you.
I just had a quick technical question, probably to address to Vincent. Forgot to ask it before. The side yard setback to the north, that's been checked and that's in
Yes,
compliance?
Code compliant. yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions of the applicant?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, would anybody else like to address the commission on this project? Okay, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Who would like to start us off?
Well, I was okay with their side view. I'm not sure I'm thrilled about garages facing, but they eliminated the setback problem, so, and I guess they mitigated the bulk and mass, so I'm okay with it.
Joe?
I'm pretty happy with option A in terms of fulfilling their desires, and it eliminates the other things that we've wrestled with at the previous meetings. So they're happy with it. I'm happy with it. And
Yeah, I mean, I think, you did exactly what we asked, and I think, taking counsel from, professional who helps you see it in a different way, I think was beneficial, and I think I personally do like option A. I think it, there's always things that you can tweak and make better, but I think it fits and I think it works. I think you get more of your front is going to be landscaped and sort of, create that screen, and, you've got, and the in and out is very efficient. You're using Olive Tree Lane as part of your back out and back in. I think this is exactly kind of where, I was hoping you would end up at, and it doesn't need to encroach. I mean, I think it's a win-win. So, I don't have any issues with it, with the option A.
Likewise, I'd just like to say that I really appreciate having these much higher quality plans for us to evaluate, because it's really hard for us to evaluate projects when we don't have enough information to actually know what exactly the project is. So that made it much better. I don't think I wouldn't have been able to approve it with an encroachment, and clearly you found a way to do it without encroaching into the front yard setback, which I think would have required a variance, and it's a much better project, so I think it's okay.
Right. Yeah, I concur. When I first heard it was a front-facing garage, I was a little skeptical, but I think it actually looks good and fits in. And I also walked back up to the site earlier to sort of visualize it, and I did notice that there were a number of other homes on the street that had the front-facing garage, so I do think it fits in and it looks nice. I also think that staff has revised the findings well so that they are easy to make, and I appreciate that we are doing this, as we've talked about before, based on a reasonable accommodation, and this isn't just a pure design review. So I think that with those comments, I can get behind option A as well.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to add that generally we wouldn't approve a garage in the front like this, and I think that it is a reasonable accommodation for us to do that, to provide the access that you need. So it was an important consideration in our looking at this project.
Right.
And to make that decision.
Well, it sounds like we have consensus. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve design review permit 1802 and reasonable accommodation 1801, specifying option A.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Okay, our second public hearing is to be continued. Do we need to actually open that public hearing, or do we just note that it's going to be continued?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we do need to make a motion to continue this to a date certain. In this case, it's September 20th, and this is at the request of the applicant.
Okay, I'll entertain that motion.
I'll make that motion to continue it to September 20th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously, and we will take it up at, I guess, our next meeting then. We will return to oral communication. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to address the commission, you get a second opportunity. Seeing no one, we will move on to planning commissioners. Anybody like to address the commission?
I have nothing.
Okay, then we'll go to staff.
So on the September 11th City Council meeting, if you recall, we had an historic designation for 500 Mariposa Avenue. That will be heard by the City Council on the 11th. And as I previously mentioned, we also had the commercial ordinance scheduled, and I told you that was going to occur. That's been postponed until after our joint study session, which is with the City Council on October 23rd. So the commercial ordinance will come back before City Council based on their input thereafter.
Okay, so you said that the joint meeting with City Council is October 23rd.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about 500 Mariposa?
Yes.
This is going to be, as we discussed at the commission, this is something unique. I think is it the first or the second modernist house modernism is old now.
Right.
That is in the process of gaining a historic designation here. Personally speaking, I'd like to be able to address the council.
Yes, certainly the commissioners are welcome to attend and provide comment. Just one or two of you.
Do we speak as individuals?
You could, if we don't have a quorum, if we don't have more than 3 commissioners present and speaking at the same meeting, then you could speak as commissioners.
Otherwise, it's assumed that
It would
any of
be-
us is speaking for the commission.
Right, or you can come in and speak as individuals if you wish.
Right, you can always speak as an individual, and you can identify yourself as a planning commissioner, but unless the matter has come before the planning commission and already received some kind of a consensus position, then you wouldn't, when you're speaking to the council about it, you wouldn't represent that your position is a consensus position of the planning commission.
Then you'd have
That's
to
just
state.
nuance.
Then
Yeah.
you'd have to state that you're speaking as an individual.
As an individual and as a member of the planning commission, but it hasn't gone before the planning commission
But
as
in
a
this-
body.
But in this case, it has gone through the planning commission and it's
Okay.
been.
Right,
So
we-
then, yes, so then you
go
can.
Speak as a
you
member.
You can speak either way.
That's right,
So
yeah.
you can say, as a commission recommended unanimously.
Yes.
Up, 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 up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say that, and you can speak further as an architect and regarding the matter, yes.
Can I just go back for a second and ask what time that joint meeting is?
That will be at their regular time at 6:30.
Okay, thank you. Just want to put it in my calendar. And then oh, never mind.
And that joint study session or joint meeting will be held in this room, so it's going to be quite a challenge.
Cozy.
We've done it before, that's why we have those tables.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
That's it for staff.
Okay, I will then adjourn the meeting until our next meeting on September 20th.